The next chapter that we're looking at is in part 5 here, The Way to a Fortunate Rebirth. So here we have a number of different texts that look at the kind of things that we need to do to get a fortunate rebirth. Not necessarily full enlightenment, but to put us in a position so that if we are reborn in another lifetime, that it will be fortunate. It will be in a form through which we can achieve enlightenment, or at least move a step closer as a part of that. So in the introduction, the overview of this, Bodhi, or Bhikkhu Bodhi says, the Buddha says that soon after his enlightenment, he saw that sentient beings are like lotus flowers at various stages of growth within a pond. While some are like lotuses near the surface, capable of awakening merely by being exposed to this world-transcending teachings, the vast majority are like lotuses growing deep below the surface. These lotuses benefit from sunlight, yet they need time to reach the surface and blossom. So the idea is that some people can get it almost instantly, but most of it's going to take a little bit more time, a little bit more effort for that to happen. So this process ordinarily requires many lives, a long-term approach, and certainly that's the approach that is articulated in the Theravada, and so we see shorter-term approaches in the Mahayana and this lifetime when we get to Tantra. So they must avoid rebirth in the unfortunate realms, because if you go to an unfortunate realm, then you get stuck there and it's very difficult to get out of those and then get up into the fortunate ones where, again, you can pursue enlightenment. So the benefits here come about through the acquisition of punya, or merit, the capacity of wholesome action to yield beneficial results within the cycle of rebirths. The cosmos is governed at all levels by immutable laws: physical, biological, psychological, and ethical. It is regulated by a law that works in two principal ways. First, it connects our actions with a particular realm of rebirth that corresponds to our actions. And then second, determines the relations between our actions and the quality of our experience within the particular realm. So two parts there. One is, what realm are we going to wind up in based on our actions? And then two, within that realm, that we can have both good and bad kinds of things going on. So you can be born in the human realm, which would be a fortunate rebirth, but you can have bad things happen to you as a result of your karma. Or you can have good things happen to you. So even within each realm, there's a range of possibilities of what can happen to you as a part of that. The governing factor is the force of karma, or karma, which literally means action, but technically refers to volitional action, intentional kinds of action. So that's really the important part of this. Having willed something, one acts by body, speech, and mind. Such volition may remain purely mental, thoughts, plans, desires, or it may become an expression outwardly through bodily and verbal actions. In the next paragraph, the third line, according to the Buddha, all morally determinate volitional actions create a potential to bring forth results, or fruits, that correspond to ethical quality of those actions. This capacity to produce morally appropriate results is what is meant by karma. When intentional and external conditions are suitable, the karma ripens and produces the appropriate fruits. So we create the karma, but the karma itself doesn't really do anything. It's when certain conditions that arise that cause that to happen. So you can think about, you have the seed of a plant, and often a seed is the metaphor that's given here. We have this seed, but we need to have the right conditions for it to ripen. So in order for the seed to ripen, it needs some soil, it needs some water, and some sunlight, and so forth for that to happen. So we need conditions, similarly, for karma to ripen. Certain conditions have to exist in order for that to happen. And so this may happen either later or in the same life, the next life, or some distant future life. Next paragraph, on the basis of its ethical quality, the Buddha distinguishes two categories, unwholesome and wholesome. Unwholesome karma is action that is spiritually detrimental to the agent, morally reprehensible, and potentially productive of an unfortunate rebirth and painful results. The criterion is the underlying motives, the roots, if you will. The three unwholesome roots are greed, hatred, and delusion. The three poisons, expressed a little differently, but the three poisons. From these, there arises a wide variety of secondary defilements: anger, hostility, envy, selfishness, arrogance, pride, presumption, and laziness as some examples. Wholesome karma, on the other hand, is action that is spiritually beneficial and morally commendable. It ripens in happiness and good fortune. Its underlying motives are the three wholesome roots: non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. They are more positively expressed as generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So you have the two categories with some subdivisions within each of those. So wholesome roots may be of two kinds, basically: mundane and world transcending. Mundane actions have the potential to produce a fortunate rebirth and pleasant results within a round of rebirths. The wholesome transcending or supramundane wholesome actions, the karma generated by developing the Noble Eightfold Path and other aids to enlightenment, lead to enlightenment and to liberation from the round of rebirths. So when we talk about liberation, what we're talking about at the ultimate level is being liberated from those three poisons, the unwholesome poisons, and also being liberated then from this cycle of rebirth, what we call samsara. So this is the karma that dismantles the entire process of karmic causation. So then we go through the specific sections here within the text of the actual sutras. And the first grouping is called the four kinds of karma. So this starts with text 1.1 here, or V11. This refers to an unwholesome action as dark karma, and a wholesome action as bright karma. It also refers to a type of karma that is both bright and dark. So it doesn't have to be black or white. It can also be kind of a checkerboard square, a little bit of both. So a few lines down, the combined karma refers to the conduct of a person who intermittently engages in both unwholesome and wholesome behavior. Very few of us that do entirely unwholesome or entirely wholesome kinds of activities. We almost all fit into this other category. But there's also a fourth type that is neither dark nor bright. This is the action of developing the Noble Eightfold Path, the wholesome, world-transcending karma. So this is the one that we would prefer to be engaged in. So neither dark nor bright. And understanding and acceptance of this principle of karma and its fruit is an essential component of right view. Right view has two aspects: world-bound or mundane, which pertains to life within the world, and supramundane or world-transcending, which pertains to the path of liberation. The world-transcending right view includes an understanding of the Four Noble Truths, dependent origination, and the three marks of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. For early Buddhism, the world-transcending right view cannot be taken up in isolation from the mundane right view. The mundane right view means a firm conviction in the validity of the law of karma and its unfolding through the process of rebirths. Now, one of the things that I mention periodically when we talk about karma is the fact that not everybody believes in karma. And there are places in some of the sutras where the Buddha talks about essentially this same idea. And that is that if you don't believe in karma, but you act as if it was true, then you'll get the same result. Okay, because it's the actual action. It's not the believing in karma or not believing in karma that's important. It's what you do and what your intention is as a part of that. So if we do wholesome action, and those are, remember, the definition of karma here is intentional actions. So it's not just actions, but actions that we intended to do and in that way. Continuing on the next page here, 148, then, to accept the law of karma entails a radical transformation in our understanding of our relationship to the world. So remember, Buddhism is often described as training the mind. And so this is an important part of what we're talking about. An external reflection of the internal cosmos of the mind. This does not mean a mental projection in the way proposed by certain types of philosophical idealism. However, these two show that the conditions under which we live closely correspond to the karmic tendencies of our minds. We train our mind, we habituate our mind to behaving in certain ways. And so not that every action we take follows that habit. Sometimes we deviate for one reason or another from our usual way of doing things. But the karma is important. And so from a modern science point of view, we have to think about it in terms of training our mind to be building the neural pathways in our brain specifically to help us in terms of habitual tendencies. Thus, in the final analysis, all realms of existence have been formed, fashioned, and sustained by the mental activity of living beings. The next text, then, is why beings fare as they do after death. So in this one, it draws a finer distinction among the unwholesome and wholesome karma. In the last one, it was just the four types of bright or dark or both or neither. And so here, the text enumerates 10 primary instances of each class called unrighteous conduct and righteous conduct. So the terminology just switches just a little bit here. They are usually known as the 10 pathways of unwholesome and wholesome karma, subdivided into the 3 doors of action: body, speech, and mind. So the unwholesome ones first are 3 kinds of bodily misconduct: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. 4 kinds of verbal misconduct: lying, malicious speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter or gossip. And the 3 kinds of mental misconduct: covetousness, ill will, and wrong view. In terms of the wholesome actions, these are just their opposite, and sometimes they're treated as antidotes. So in Mahayana, for example, they're treated as antidotes. The wholesome actions are the antidotes to the unwholesome actions. So the wholesome are the opposites: abstinence from the 3 kinds of bodily misconduct, abstinence from the 4 verbal misconduct, and non-covetous, goodwill, and right view. So the 10 types of unwholesome karma are the reason that beings are reborn in bad destinations. The 10 types of wholesome karma, the reason beings are born in good destinations. Wholesome karma is the support for a heavenly rebirth, but also the destruction of the taints, resulting in liberation. So the taints are those 3 poisons and so forth, and getting rid of those. The concluding paragraphs of this particular sutra give us a brief survey of Buddhist cosmology, divided into 3 broad realms: the sense sphere realm, which we usually refer to as the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm, each comprising a range of subsidiary planes. So the desire realm, for example, we have the 6 different realms within the desire realm, and then there's a bunch of them in the form realm and another bunch of them in the formless realm. And the form realm and formless realms are all called God realms, and the top 2 of the desire realm are also God realms. So there's lots of God realms, and then just 4 other ones below that. So the sense sphere realms here, the first one is described, or desire realm, our realm. We have beings reborn here are strongly driven by sensual desire, hence the term desire realm. Two levels, bad and good. The bad destinations are the hells, states of intense torment, the animal kingdom, and the sphere of spirits, the hungry ghosts, and with incessant hunger, thirst, and other sufferings. These are the realms of retribution for the 10 unwholesome actions. Then the good destinations are the human realm and the 6 sensual heavenly planes. We don't divide them into 6 planes here, but what we have are the 2 that I mentioned, the jealous gods and the gods, as a part of that. And so the devas in the heaven of the 4 great kings are mentioned, Tava Timsa devas and the Yama devas, Tushita heaven, the abode of the Bodhisattvas before their final birth, the Nemanrati devas, the Paranimita, I think it was like Paramita, Vasavati devas, the karmic cause for rebirth, the practice of the 10 courses of wholesome action. And then the form realm. We have grosser types of material form are absent, so there's no gross physical form. It's almost more like what we talk about, the rainbow body or something like that, but there's no physical material in the form we usually think of it anyway. So those are known as Brahmas. They enjoy bliss, power, luminosity, vitality far superior to the beings of the sense sphere realm. And it consists of 16 planes, the objective counterparts of the 4 jhanas. So it goes through each of the 4 jhanas there and describes those in a little bit more detail. Then on page 150, toward the bottom of the first paragraph there, the form realm also comprises 5 planes reserved exclusively for the rebirth of non-returners, called the pure abodes, and it lists those. And then the lifespan is said to be of enormous duration and to increase significantly with each higher plane. So with each of those 16 different realms, the lifespan gets longer and longer and longer within those. The third realm, then, the material form is completely non-existent, and a bare mental process exists at all. So we have this is the formless realm. This consists of 4 planes, which are the objective counterparts of the 4 formless meditative attainments: the base of the infinity of space, the base of the infinity of consciousness, the base of nothingness, and the base of neither perception nor non-perception. And then the lifespans are given respectively of 20,000, 40,000, 60,000, and 84,000 great eons. And we looked earlier at the mountain example, wiping of how long it took an eon. So, and even that was not as long as an actual eon. So continuing on, then, the existence in every realm is impermanent. Beings take rebirth into a realm appropriate to their karma or deeds, and then when the generative karma has spent its force, then they pass away, take rebirth elsewhere as determined by more karma that has found an opportunity to ripen. So we could be reborn in the same realm because we've got other karma at that same realm and the conditions happen to be right, or we could completely fall down into the hell realm. Maybe we've got some really bad karma from something we've done that never has been burned off, and so we could make that complete dive down to the bottom. The Buddha guides those whose spiritual faculties are still tender to aspire for a human or heavenly rebirth, but he urges those with mature faculties to make a determined effort to put an end to the aimless wandering of samsara and to reach deathlessness, nirvana, which transcends all conditioned planes of being. So it depends on us and what we're capable of doing in terms of what the Buddha's instructions are for us. If we have higher level of faculties, then he encourages us to go for it, achieve enlightenment in this lifetime. But if we don't, if we're a little bit lazy or a little bit careless in our actions and so forth, then at least aspire to try and reach another human rebirth or a higher one of the God realms as a part of that. So then we have the next text, number 3 in this set, Karma and its Fruits, which specifies the underlying karmic causes for manifest differences in the human life. So beings are owners of their karma, heirs of their karma. They originate from their karma and are bound to their karma. They have their karma as refuge. It's a reference to the idea that we tend to seek after those kind of things that we have habituated through our previous karma to do it all over again. It is karma that distinguishes beings from inferior and superior. The sutta proposes 7 pairs of contrasting qualities and 2 types of consequences of unwholesome karma and rebirth in a bad destination, unpleasant fruits within the human state, for example, a short life for one who has earlier life killed living beings, and wholesome karma, rebirth in a heavenly realm, and pleasant fruits within the human state. So it gives some different examples of possibilities within those 2 general categories. The next section then deals with merit. Wholesome karma, capable of yielding favorable results within a cycle of rebirths. We have mundane benefits like good rebirth, wealth, beauty, success, and it also serves as an enhancing condition for supramundane benefits for attaining stages along the path. In the next text, he talks about meritorious deeds. The Buddha urges his disciples to cultivate merit, referring to his own cultivation of merit over many previous lives. These were the previous lives as a bodhisattva. And then the next one is the 3 bases of merit, which organizes merit into these 3 different categories of giving, moral discipline, and meditation, 3 of the 6 perfections that we are familiar with. And so we have connections. This connects the basis of merit with the types of rebirth. In the Indian religious context, meritorious deeds revolves around faith in certain objects regarded as sacred and spiritually empowering, serving as a support for the acquisition of merit. For followers of the Buddha's teachings, these are the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And so then he extols these in the next text, which refers to the best kinds of confidence. And here the Buddha is considered supreme among persons, the Dharma among the teachings, and the Sangha among religious communities. The text proposes an interesting 2-fold distinction of the Dharma jewel. Among all conditioned things, the Noble Eightfold Path is supreme. Among all things conditioned or unconditioned, nirvana is supreme. Having confidence in the 3 jewels, that is, reverential trust and devotion, is itself a basis of merit. But the Buddha and the Sangha additionally function as the recipients of gifts. In the role, they further enable donors to acquire merit. So he's talking here about the fact that his Sangha is, for the most part, monks and nuns. And so they go out begging for food or other kinds of things that they need for survival. But it's not just those individuals doing those practices who are benefiting from good karma. The people who are donating to them are also receiving merit as a part of that action. And so he is clear about that. So he wants to be sure that the monastic community, when they're going out and doing these things, are treating the donor community well as well, because they are doing things to create merit. And so we need to ensure that they are receiving those kinds of benefits as best we can. So then he goes through here the different categories And this is a little bit long, but in the following sections elaborate on the three bases of merit individually. So the first one is giving or generosity, or dana. And here the Buddha is often treated giving as the most rudimentary virtue, which serves to break down the egocentric frame of mind. So if we're generous, our attitude about our own ego and so forth can be broken down through our own generosity. So that's one of the reasons that it's very important. However, giving is not simply a philanthropic charity. It includes that, but it also has more context-specific meaning rooted in the social structure of Indian religiosity. Yeah, thank you. Okay. During the Buddha's time, those who sought to fathom the deepest truths of existence and attain release from the round of birth and death usually renounced home and family, relinquished their secure place in a cohesive social order, and adopted the precarious life of a homeless wanderer. With shaved heads or matted locks, clad in ochre or white robes, or going naked, they would move from place to place without fixed abode, except during the rainy season, when they would settle in simple huts, caves, or other lodgings. Such homeless wanderers were known as shamanans or ascetics, or paribhajakas, wanderers that did not perform any remunerative services. In other words, they weren't paid for anything that they did, but depended on the charity of householders for livelihood. The lay devotees provided them with their robes, food, lodgings, medicines, and so forth. And so that was then a source of merit to them. The Buddha then adopted this mode of life for himself and the Sangha. He established the Sangha on the same principle with the monks and nuns, depending on the charity of others, and they would reciprocate by offering the donors a precious gift of Dharma. In other words, when they received some kind of food or other things from them, they would give them a simple teaching from the Buddha as a part of that. So that's how they shared back. The teaching of the lofty path that leads to happiness, peace, and final liberation. And then this testifies to this principle of mutual support, giving and giving back. So the volume of merit generated by the act of giving is considered to be proportional to the worthiness of the recipient. When the recipients are the Buddha and those following in his footsteps, the merit becomes immeasurable. The Shravaka Sangha, the spiritual community of noble disciples, is called the unsurpassable field of merit for the world. And it is considered only for the morally pure. The second category here is the next basis of merit, moral discipline, or shila, which for early Buddhism requires the undertaking of precepts. The most basic of those are the 5 precepts. And the 5 precepts we usually talk about as the lay precepts, but they actually are a part of the monastic precepts as well. It's not just lay people. So abstaining from taking life, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, and the use of intoxicants. So here it speaks of them as pristine, traditional, ancient gifts. They actually precede both the Buddha and the Vedas, implicitly subsuming shila, and under dana. And because one who undertakes the precepts will be giving to immeasurable beings freedom from fear, hostility, and oppression, and will enjoy immeasurable freedom from fear, hostility, and oppression. So then the next one is the another kind of a special practice that is done. We don't normally do that in Tibetan Buddhism, but it's a fairly common practice in the path of individual liberation to do this. And so this is the Uposatha observance. While the Buddha enjoys observance of the 5 precepts on lay followers as a full-time obligation, he recommends a more stringent type of moral practice for the Uposatha. the observance days, the full moon, new moon, and the 2 half moon days. Of the 4 in Buddhist countries today, the full moon day has priority. Devout lay Buddhists undertake the 8 precepts here. So the usual 5, and then changing the third one to complete sexual abstinence for that one day, and then augmented by 3 others. The 3 others, they only eat 1 meal per day, and it's taken before noon, and then no dancing or music. And the third one is no high beds or seats. And sometimes they would just sleep on the floor or on a pad on the floor or something like that as a part of that. So those are the other 3, which he doesn't list here. And then in the text there, V4.2, this augments these with a training in self-restraint, simplicity, and contentment to prepare the disciple for the training of the mind on meditation, which is the next category. Meditation is not only the heart of the path to liberation, but a source of merit in its own right. Wholesome meditation practices, even those that do not directly lead to insight, help to purify the grosser levels of mental defilement and uncover deeper dimensions of the mind's potential purity and radiance. Then we have a text on the development of loving kindness, which declares that the type of meditation that is most fruitful for the mundane merit is loving kindness. So in ordinary context, this is supposed to be the most fruitful of all the practices that we can do. The practice of loving kindness, however, is only one among a set of 4 meditations called the divine abodes, or the 4 immeasurables. The development of loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity, which are to be extended boundlessly to all sentient beings. So these are guidelines, and these are a very important part of the Tibetan Buddhist practice as well, so I'm sure you're all familiar with these. Loving kindness is the wish for the welfare and happiness of all beings. Compassion is a feeling of empathy for all those afflicted. It's not, sometimes we talk about feeling sorry, but empathy is different from feeling sorry. For all those afflicted by suffering. And then altruistic joy, the feeling of happiness at the success and good fortune of others. And equanimity, a balanced reaction to the joy and misery. A little bit different definition than we usually use for this. Which protects one from emotional agitation. It's somewhat like that in the way that we talk about it, but here we usually talk about it as treating all beings the same. Whether it's someone that we relate to as good or someone we relate to as bad, equanimity means equality across the board with all of those, not giving anyone preferential treatment. So these meditations are to be the means for the rebirth in the Brahma world. These are the 4 immeasurables here. The Brahmins regard the Brahma world as the highest attainment, but for the Buddha, it was just one exalted sphere of rebirth. Concentration from these meditations, however, can be used as a basis of cultivating the wisdom of insight, and insight culminates in liberation. So even though these are not really the highest level kinds of practices that we can do, they are a step on the path. They give us an important aspect of ultimate enlightenment, which is wisdom and compassion, great compassion. And so it helps us build on that, but it's also stepwise a level in our own development of concentration that we then apply to other kinds of practices as a part of that. Then the last one is called Insight Surpasses All. And so in this selection there are grades of different types of merit according to their fruits, and giving is ranked according to the spiritual status of recipients through going for refuge and the 5 precepts to the meditation on loving kindness. Then at the very end, the most fruitful deed of all is the perception of impermanence. So impermanence is also a very important one, and a part of what we call the 4 thoughts that turn the mind. But this is not because it yields pleasant, mundane results, but it leads to wisdom of insight that cuts the chains of bondage and brings the realization of complete emancipation, or nirvana.